Elder Interviews, and welcome to those who are about to experience this for the first time. This is an offering of creation spirituality communities where we explore the lives and experiences of our creation spirituality elders, women and men whose spirits shine with the hard-won wisdom of the sage. We always welcome new ideas for future folks to take part, so please let Gail, John, or I know if you have a suggestion. Next month, on November 16th, I'll be interviewing Larry Edwards. My name is Penny Andrews, 2001 UCS graduate, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's conversation with Alexandra Kovats, my first teacher back at UCS in 1999.
Wow.
Her class was a great launch for experiences that we're about to follow. It is also my pleasure to introduce John Robinson, who will conduct our interview. John is a clinical psychologist with a second doctorate in ministry from UCS, an ordained interfaith minister from Chaplaincy Institute, the author of 9 books and numerous articles on the psychology, spirituality, and mysticism of New Aging, and a frequent speaker at conscious aging conferences. You can learn more about John's work from www.johnrobinson.org. In a moment, John will introduce our distinguished guest, Alexandra. John's interview will run about 45 minutes to be followed by question, answer, and comments. So make notes of your questions and comments until we move into that final segment. So with no more ado, here is John to introduce Alexandra.
Well, Penny, thank you so much. I'm really very excited to be doing this interview. So let me start with this introduction of our distinguished guest. Dr. Alexandra Kovats is an internationally known teacher and lecturer on ecological and creation spirituality, cosmology, ecofeminism, and religious life. She was program director, instructor, and staff member at the Institute in Culture and Creation Spirituality in Oakland, the Sophia Center of Holy Names. She taught at University of Creation Spirituality for many years, and she has been an adjunct professor in spirituality for the School of Theology and Ministry at Seattle University since 1989, where she teaches all her classes through a cosmological lens, which I find absolutely fascinating. Alexandra was born in Budapest, Hungary, and escaped with her family during the freedom fight in 1956, settling in Vancouver, British Columbia, where she remains a Canadian citizen. In 2014, she also became a U.S. citizen. She entered the religious life in 1962 in Bellingham as a member of the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace, Catholic sisters. She has a master's degree in spirituality from Mundelein College in Chicago, a master's in religious education from Forthright College in Spokane, and a PhD in ecological spirituality from the Union Institute and University in Cincinnati. Alexandra lives in Seattle and travels extensively to facilitate retreats and workshops. A spiritual director as well, she journeys with people of different ages, lifestyles, and cultural and ethnic backgrounds in support of fuller and freer lives, including this interviewer. Most recently, following a growing interest in indigenous spirituality, Alexandra was initiated in the Peruvian shamanic tradition of Pachacuti, receiving her medicine bundle and connecting her more deeply with the spirituality of her Hungarian childhood. Wow. With all that said, welcome, Alexandra, to Elder Interviews. It is wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, I love your background too. That's Oregon, huh?
It is Oregon, and I chose intentionally the window so you can see some of the gorgeous trees and the gifted rain that is ours today.
Thankfully, it's raining. So let's begin with your teaching career. How did you get interested in new cosmology, and whose work influenced you the most?
Well, it's a long story, but it was particularly in 1983 when I went to Mundelein College, where Matt Fox had his program on Institute of Culture and Creation Spirituality. I received a sabbatical, and that's the first time I met Thomas Berry, and we were extremely gifted in having Brian Swim as our artist in residence that year. And that wasn't supposed to happen. The artist in residence initially was in a motorcycle accident and he died. And so Brian came on board with his family. I had a chance to meet Brian before, because he's from Tacoma, Washington. And so it was just a wonderful year of exploration. And basically that's where I began my cosmological, which at that time I didn't even know what cosmology meant, exploration and discovery of how deeply I was drawn to this new cosmology.
Well, where has it taken you? I mean, what has the new cosmology brought into your consciousness? Somebody's got radio going on. Is there somebody with a radio going on?
Sue just came in and hers was on. I think.
Okay, so back to Alexandra.
Basically, the new cosmology, and I want to share a significant sacred moment that happened to me that turned my world upside down, just like somebody's upside down on the screen. And what happened was Thomas Berry came, and we had our Wednesday forum, which was a time where different speakers would come to enrich us with their insights, artists, scientists, spiritual theologians. And Thomas Berry came, and that's the first time he articulated the three cosmic principles that just when I heard them, they just grabbed me, and I've never been the same. And it is those principles that led me to doctoral studies because I wanted to explore them further. And then it's those principles that I have become the template for my own spirituality as well as for my teaching and spiritual companioning, and I think anything that I do.
Well, you want to say some more about those three principles?
Yes, and I'm just going to do a very quick reminder because most of us are familiar with them. But and they are grounded, just to give credit, they are grounded in Teilhard de Chardin's insights and then carried forward by Thomas Berry and Brian Swim. And there are a number of, and Larry Edwards, who will be the next speaker, elder. They continue to evolve it and unfold it. And the three principles, they are cosmic because they are both on the level, the galactic as well as the minuscule level, the least dynamics that are present in the universe. And they are the principle, and it's important not to say first, second, third, because what happens is they dance together. As a matter of fact, my dissertation was dance was part of the dancing principles because they are moving and growing. And so how I envision it is there is this dance, and then what we do is we focus on one of the partners of the dance. So, but the others are there as well, but our focus is on one. So they are not separate. They constantly move together. And one of the principles is differentiation. Mm-hmm. And basically what that principle says that every being, and I'm trying to stay away from the language of things because that's objectifying and it's very difficult. But everything in the universe is different from everything else. Uh-huh. And so the example is if we even look at a tree and we see the leaves, that each of those leaves is different from the other if we spend time to be present to it. And that's really key, and that's a common theme that will emerge. So everything is different. And I remember in grade school I learned in Hungarian that there are no two snowflakes that are alike. It's that sort of notion. The other principle that dances together with the principle of differentiation is I like to engage with the Greek word for it, which is autopoiesis. Now, there are many other names for these principles. Interiority, subjectivity. And the reason I choose not to say those words, because the minute we hear those, we have certain ideas of what they mean. And so autopoiesis, auto means self, and poiesis is formation. So every being from molecules and even below to galactic dynamics has the ability to become itself from inside out. It's the guiding or the driving principle of its becoming. And so obviously it's going to be much less perceived on a simple level, like in a molecule, but as we move to more complex systems and dynamics, that autopoiesis is much more evident. And so that's the second, or I shouldn't say second, another principle. And the third one, or the third partner in the dance, is the principle of communion. And what it says is that everything that is, that has been, that will be, is connected with everything else. It's that interdependence, that interconnection. And so that's why we can say that we are stardust awakened into consciousness as human beings. So that's the those are the three principles. And I am convinced that if one of those principles is missing from, or I minimize it, then I cannot live a life of justice. Because I need to be in right relationship with them. So one of the questions I often ask after teaching, for instance, a class, I have a reflection evaluation for myself after each class or after each spiritual companioning session. How did I celebrate differentiation or the differences? How did I support autopoiesis? And how did we engage in communion? And so for me, those are principles that have really become enfleshed in my very being.
Wow.
And so whether I teach a course, I teach a variety of courses at Seattle University. I teach a course on contemporary Christian spirituality and prayer. And so how I bring cosmology, and not only do I explore the cosmological principles, but also look at the unfolding of Christian spirituality from an evolutionary perspective. Instead of, this break happened and this was the good person, this was the bad person. And we have such a tendency to judge rather than recognize that we are evolving and growing. And because of that, I am one of those people that I hope that will never come to a point, for instance, that Christianity just becomes one version, which some people are for, because the diversity celebrates the richness and the fullness of the divine. And so to pull it into just one form, for me, would minimize that possibility.
So how do you understand the divine itself through these principles?
Well, the divine is the very source of all that is, and is not separate from the whole of created reality. And in theological language, we talk about entheism, panentheism. So everything is in the divine, and the divine is in everything. So right now we have a divine encounter. Everybody who is on, we are present with our dimension of the divine to enrich this experience. Whether we see each other or whether we hear each other, but to really recognize that whether it's right now I'm dog sitting 4 dogs and there is a puppy who is absolutely delightful. They are expressions of that divine. They are, as Meister Eckhart would say, the Word of God. And Word of God unfolding and becoming. So that's my understanding. So there is no split level that sacred activities or religious activities are where the divine is, and then there is the rest of life, which is how we've lived. And I think creation spirituality has been incredibly supportive of recognizing that that's not the truth.
How has ecological spirituality and ecofeminism added to this breadth of understanding?
Well, for one thing, for me, ecological spirituality recognizes that creation is an absolute essential and significant part of the spiritual journey. And because I am working a lot in the Christian tradition, although not exclusively, because I engage with a lot of different dynamics, there are 4 loves. Christianity is grounded in 4 loves: love of God, love of neighbor, love of self, and love of creation, because that's the Judaic gift that we received. And what has happened is throughout the ages, some of those loves got lost in the shuffle. And it wasn't too long ago, some of you might remember, that to love oneself was seen as selfish. Instead of recognizing that, how do I honor this temple of God that I am? How do I love that which has loved me into being? So creation has been left on the side, and now there is the ability to recognize that love of creation is absolutely essential if we are to have a habitable planet to live on.
Yes.
So it's coming in.
Ecofeminism?
Well, basically what ecofeminism proclaims, and again, I'm doing very brief sort of.
You're doing beautifully.
Basically, it says that woman and creation and nature have been oppressed. And in order for one to be freed, the other needs to be attended to. So I can be incredibly supportive of creation, but if I continue to see women as second-class citizens, or women who are not fully capable of honoring their unfolding and becoming, then that's not going to go anywhere. And notice the languaging of, we are talking about raping, we are talking about virgin forests, raping the land, and so much of the metaphors that we pay attention to are also seen and grounded in both women's and nature's reality.
Thank you. Let's turn a little bit to your own evolution as a person. How did your Hungarian childhood and your family's escape from Budapest in 1956 shape your journey and your beliefs and this becoming of you?
Wow.
That's a big question, I know.
We have a few hours.
Yeah, we do. I'll stay.
No, I basically, in Hungary, I just want to acknowledge that we lived under communism and we were deported. We almost ended up in Siberia, but instead we ended up in a little village. This was right around at the beginning of the 1950s. And so I became very familiar with hunger, with being jeered and seen as the other very early on, because we were in the little village where we were deported. We were seen as different, and that we couldn't leave the village borders. The police would come, or the police would come sometimes during the middle of the night to see that everybody was there. We lived in one little room. So that informed me that in the midst of those difficulties, it's possible to continue to live with a sense of hope and integrity. And my mother was the best example of that. And so she was just an incredible human being and a feminist, although she would never dare, would probably be horrified if somebody called her a feminist, but way ahead of her time. But she lived her faith with a sense of integrity and with a sense of clarity that was a strong influence. Another thing that probably from my Hungarian heritage, there are 2 gifts that come to mind particularly today. And one of them is the love of beauty. Beauty is a category that is very important and essential to Hungarians, whether that's natural beauty, whether that's the beauty of music, whether that's the beauty of folk art, dance. And so that I didn't realize how much I've been influenced by that. And then I'm reminded when I was in class at Mundelein with Matt as he was teaching his course, and he just opened my eyes to, he said that, you know, the word glory in Greek, doxa, also means beauty. And so that was something really moving and important for me. And then the other Hungarian gift is Hungary has always been trampled between East and West. We were always the bloodshed ground where a lot of the fights happened. And I was too young during the Second World War to remember much, but I clearly, during the freedom fights, saw some atrocities and death and real difficulties. But what has happened is every time the country and the people were knocked down, they stood up and kept going. And so for me, any challenge, any difficulty, it's not about giving up. It's about keep going. And I particularly discovered that when I went back to Hungary when I was in my 20s for the first time. And it was just a real recognition of the cultural gifts, because what I find is a lot of people in this land and also in Canada don't deal with suffering and pain well. We have a way of wanting to cover it up. And I think, well, and it's not that there isn't some covering up of that as in Hungary as well, because alcoholism is alive and well. Although I'm not too sure some of it is because of covering up or because there's such enjoyment of, you know, of the gifts of creation. So to recognize that those are two gifts that I'm most grateful for.
Well, my heart just aches as you talk about what that must have been like as a little girl and the prejudice and the hatred and the violence that was all around you. Has all that affected your own trajectory through life?
I want to say that I am really open to what we refer to as the other. To be open to somebody who is in a different situation, who is on the margins, and that there is an awareness, I think, that has been shaped because of my own experience. Yeah.
Did this affect your decision to enter a religious order, and how did that contribute to your
Well, it's again another long story. You know, when you talk to older people, stories.
We like stories.
And yes, basically, I was also in a situation of other when we came to Canada, because my mother, even though she was the first woman radio announcer of Hungary, and she was a magazine editor and a newspaper reporter. And she ended up, when we came to Canada, she ended up cleaning houses and offices. That was sort of the way for her to support us. And so what happened was she graduated from the Religious of the Sacred Heart, which is an international community. They used to be called Madams of the Sacred Heart. And because she was a graduate from Hungary of theirs, the school in Vancouver, they had a school. And I was able to participate there, even though there was no ability to pay, so I was a refugee, and there were about a dozen or so Hungarian women, girls at that time, it was a girls' school only, that were able to participate in just a wonderful experience of education. And that's where I learned a lot of my English as well. And it was there that in the 1960s, early 60s, that there was a retreat experience where I spent a lot of time in the chapel. And I just sort of really saw that the freedom that I experienced in Vancouver, a lot of it was focused on me. And I felt that my gifts were meant to be shared. And at that time in the Catholic Church, if you wanted to do something as a woman, there were very few opportunities unless you make cookies for, sales or wash the altar linen. And so I thought about becoming a sister would be a way to share my gifts and to serve. And indeed, it's been very much that journey. So that's sort of how I was influenced in some ways. And again, I was the other there as well, because many of the girls were very rich, and my mother cleaned some of their homes, and I would go with her and help out, and it didn't seem problematic at all.
Wow, and I've had the impression that your community has also been a very rich source of love and growth and support.
Incredibly so. And one of the reasons I joined the community was, well, two reasons. When I first encountered them, there was just such a sense of joy among them. This was in 1962, 61 actually. And in those days, sisters were not seen as human, but they were, sort of the pious, with the garb and the habit. And when I met these people, they genuinely liked each other and they hugged each other. And there was just such a sense of joy. And I thought, this is something that I could participate in. But little did I know that our story as a community, which would also take a few hours, but the founder of our community had to leave because she got stepped on ecclesial toes, and they tried to blackball us to non-existence. And when she left, the community continued under another leadership. And we did not discover this till the 1960s, when we were invited to return to our origins. And our primary focus is peace through justice, especially in terms of women. So I was led there in one way, and I have continued to grow in the community. And we've been growing together. Our constitutions do have a strong ecological focus as well as justice focus. And I continue to be delighted to be part of this group for over 50 years.
Wow, you joined a group that was just like you, just full of joy and full of activism and sacred
Very
determination.
much so. Yes.
Yeah.
And, I meet some other people. Something has happened.
Yeah, I think somebody is messing with it.
Can you see me?
I can see you. You just continue. I can see you.
Okay, whatever is going on. Okay, I'm technologically
There you go.
not adept. There we go. We continue to respond to the signs of the times, especially. We believe that we cannot have peace without justice. So it's not peacekeeping, but it's about proclaiming. And right now, as many of us know, there's plenty of violence and dynamics that happen all over the world, including in our own country, that need some prophetic words and voice. And we as a community have been doing that, both within the institutional church as well as beyond, because we're also in England. Yes.
Wow. Well, so, and now you are also an initiated shaman. What led you to explore Peruvian shamanism, and how did you pick that tradition?
Well, and it's interesting because it's really grounded in cosmology. I've discovered that indigenous spiritualities became very significant in my own growth. And then I also wanted to, not just professionally, but personally explore my own shamanic roots as a Hungarian, and to not to take on the tradition from someone else, but to explore through their dynamics, how do I evolve into my own explorations and my own claiming and naming that reality. And so I'm very new at this, but the cosmology is really grounded in recognizing interconnectedness. It's grounded in the essential relationship we have with Pachamama, which is Mother Earth. And I could translate, for instance, they deeply believe that Mother Earth, it has a healing dimension. And then I'm reminded of Thomas Berry when he talks about some of the attributes of our planet, self-healing, self-governing, self-reflective. So to really recognize that there was a lot of connection for me. And I received my medicine bundle, which is in some ways, it's, I am reframing it, I'm evolving it. It's called a mesa. And the mesa is a particular sacred space or yes, that has the 4 directions, that has different dimensions that bring about, they are portals to enter into other dimensions of reality. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I speak very little of it because it's still very new. But a shaman is there to connect with sort of the whole of reality, which is not just this physical reality, but beyond. And ancestors are an important dimension. And how do we connect and honor those realities? And at the same time, it is for both transformation of self, but also transformation for the world, for the planet, for the people. So again, it's in some ways, it's a continuation of my commitment to being a sister. And it's not a religion. It's a particular approach to healing and to wholeness. So that's why it really resonated with me in a profound way.
Wow. Sounds like you are changing, and the initiation, it sound must have done some changing too in you.
I sure hope so. Because I believe that it's about waking up. One of the images I love for spirituality is to wake up and to grow awake. And so how am I waking into these new dynamics, new to me dynamics, and how do I keep growing and deepening and expanding? That's really the key. And if I don't grow, if I don't deepen, even as I teach, I often tell my students, if I don't learn, I'm not teaching well. Because there is a sense of mutuality. And even though I am responsible for what happens in the classroom, that does not mean that I am the only source of information or sometimes wisdom. Yeah.
But you're really talking about the meaning and purpose of life, of the unfolding life that is cosmogenesis.
Yes.
Individualized forms and group forms. Yeah. So how is this a stepping stone to your future? Do you see this unfolding in a particular pattern line?
I really don't.
Okay.
At this point, I see my medicine bundle primarily for me to grow with it and discover where it's going to lead me. I believe so powerfully in the organic unfolding of things. And I know that's totally in opposition to where our culture is, but it's listening and paying attention and observing and living in the now, which is so much, to me, the shamanic journey is very closely connected with the mystic journey.
Yes.
It's from a different modality, but it's the same. The same reality of growing and becoming and unfolding.
How has aging been part of this for you? What's your own aging been like? And
Well, for one thing, I can't believe I'm as old as I am. I just celebrated a birthday recently, which moved me almost to 3/4 centuries of age. That sounds ancient, but as we know, it's very small compared to the larger context. I think I'm recognizing that my energies are need more attention in terms of self-care, and that aches and pains and different dynamics emerge, and they cannot be ignored, because if I am not compassionate to myself and honoring that, then I'm creating violence. And so how do I honor that reality becomes very important to me. And then the other dynamic that's so essential for me is recognizing gratitude as the foundation of my journey. And I just a year ago, I was giving a retreat to our sisters who had their Jubilee, and I was poking around resources, and I came across this Rumi poem that I would like to share, because I think that that exemplifies for me some of the call to gratitude in the aging process.
Good.
Be grateful for your life, every detail of it, and your face will come to shine like a sun, and everyone who sees it will be made glad and peaceful. Persist in gratitude, and you will slowly become one with the sun of love, and love will shine through you, its all healing joy. This path of gratitude is not for children. It is the path of tender heroes, of the heroes of tenderness, who, whatever happens, keep burning in the altar of their hearts the flame of adoration. And so that, I've been with that particular reflection poem, sacred engagement for this past year to really discover what does that mean and how do I live that, to be grateful for every moment.
Wow.
And of course, Eckhart, as we all know, said that so powerfully, if the only prayer we ever say. And I would like to suggest if the only prayer we ever live, not just say, that is sufficient. Because we recognize that everything that is, that I am, that even my becoming is sheer gift.
It's beautiful how in the blossoming of age we come into the truth of our own nature and begin to just have the courage to live it so fully. I'm so happy for you. That's wow. So aging really has been a continuing transformation of you and self and consciousness and values.
And one of the awarenesses that I have, that I am called, especially given our political and economic and global realities, I'm called to continue to deepen my own practice of meditation, because I am convinced that growing in my own cosmic consciousness, mystic consciousness, contributes to the whole and makes a difference. And so, yes, I still am active, and I still find myself involved in not just in professionally teaching and spiritual companioning, but demonstrations and writing letters. And now I get to do it because I'm an American citizen, even though I used to do it, but it didn't count. So recognizing that grounding in the sacred continues to be an absolute essential piece of reality. Otherwise, I become reactive rather than responsive to what's going on. And there's plenty to react to.
Wow. How then are you preparing for this final stage of life and this final completion? We have frozen. Are you still there? That is very strange. Does anybody know how to fix this? Penny? Gail?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I think it's on her
Wonder if
end.
she has to dial.
I think she has to come back in again.
Oh, let me see if I can.
Let's see. I'm looking at choices for her.
Okay.
Mute, chat. Chat. We can send her a chat. See if that works. Stop video.
I think she's off at the moment. She's dropped off my screen.
Oh, has she? Well, then she's off.
Oh, no, she's at the bottom and she's okay, but she's muted.
Ah, okay.
Oh, she might have, well, where did she go? Oh, that's because she's not making any noise.
No, okay. Unmute audio. Okay.
I lost you. I have no idea what happened.
Oh, there you are. You have come back.
I am here. And I saw myself on, but I lost you. You were in the middle of speaking and then you stopped.
Yeah, and you had this most beatific expression on your face and then it just froze.
Uh-oh. That means
She went
trouble,
out
you know.
aging quickly.
So the final question, I guess, was, you know, how are you preparing for this final stage of life and bringing the completion of your life?
Well, for one thing, it's not the final word.
No, we know that,
but
yes.
it's the final word in this reality.
Yeah.
And just living one day at a time and trying to be as attentive and as aware as I can be, and acknowledging the places where I fall short, and without beating myself up, and trying to be compassionate. I think that probably that's the language. And I was so excited when Matt Fox looked at compassion from the creation tradition as living out of an awareness of interdependence. And then to celebrate it, because joy and celebration is part of compassion, is where it's present, and heal it where it is not. Because I so find compassion as misconstrued, and it's only focuses on suffering with and being, paining with another instead of joying with them is just as significant.
Well, we're almost at the end of the formal part of this. Is there anything would like to share with us before we welcome questions and comments?
Well, probably the one thing that has been incredibly helpful for me as I engage in this transformative process is so often we focus on transitions, that they are such a important dimension, and they are. But if I live in an evolving universe, I'm always in transition. And so to recognize that there is no such thing as arriving, even for a moment, because we need to hold that lightly because we are on the journey. And so that there are major transition times, and transition is there all the time. And that has helped me to not wait until the next sort of step of just stopping and taking a breath, because just taking a breath will move me to the next step. So that's something that has been very helpful for me.
Wonderful.
So.
Thank you. Penny, I will turn the microphone over to you.
Wow, thank you, Alexandra, for this glimpse into the world you are and you share with us.
Thank you.
It's now time for question and answers and comments. And just to be called on, raise your hand or make a gesture so we know, and I'll acknowledge the comment, and we can go forward. But one thing I thought because I know, or I have this sense that the arts have been huge for you. And I wondered if you could say some about the role of the arts in your life.
Thank you. I want to say that probably I would name creativity has been extremely significant in my life. And creativity, I find that much of my creativity is expressed in the way I teach, the way I relate. And then I have done wonderful, playful things in terms of calligraphy. I used to get boarding classes, so I created my own sort of alphabet. And then also dance has been very significant for me, and movement. And I have also shared more and more. Now I am teaching others to simple circle dances as a way of helping people touch into their bodies. Music and listening to music and chants and has been very rich and life-giving for me. So I am seeing creativity, and again, Matt Fox's insights about creativity, but when he looked at creativity, it's the misuse of creativity that causes oppression and injustice. And again, that was an insight that I've been living and carrying on for a long time. And I teach a course on spirituality and creativity at Seattle University. And I, again, we have a variety of ways that we enter into creativity. But what I do is, it's again grounded in the 3 cosmic principles, because actually the principle of autopoiesis is the creativity principle, which is the unfolding and becoming of one's being and of one's creative energies. And creativity does not start with humans. But it's the creativity of the universe that we participate in. And it's that creativity that enables us to heal and to dance and to support and to speak and live justice. Anyway, that might be what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Someone else with a comment or question? Yeah, Sue. Sue, you're on mute. Bottom left, unmute. Yeah, there. Should be good.
I'm not on mute now?
You're not.
Okay. Hi, Alexandra.
Hi.
It's been so fun spending this hour with you. And the last time I saw you, it was up at your Jubilee.
Yes.
And, a happy, happy day. And I just wanted to say hello. Hope I'll see you soon.
Wonderful. Blessings on you, Sue.
Thank you. Blessings on you.
Other comments? Yeah, Jim. Jim, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm off mute now. I was interested when you were talking about autopoiesis, that it came to mind Jim Hillman's work with the Soul's Code, and I was wondering if you make that connection.
I want to acknowledge that I'm not that familiar with Jim Hillman's work. Okay, that's the first acknowledgement. However, the Soul's Code, that the unique imprint of our soul, I would say, is grounded in our unique autopoiesis. I can make that statement, and it makes so much sense to me. And both for parents and teachers and those who are involved in any sort of service or healing profession, how do we honor that code rather than impose on it? Because that's
and maybe all relationships.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Blessings.
Yes, Sylvia.
Yes. Hi, Alexandra and everybody. I come from a kind of Quaker background, and one of the main things we believe in is that of God in everyone. And we are going to have a spiritual sharing on that very soon, to say what that means to each of us. What you said, Alexandra, about compassion for you is a living out of an awareness of interdependence. I think that sheds some light on it for me. And could you say a little bit more about that? How can I see that of God in someone like our current president and what he's doing?
That's a challenge. And yet, if I really believe that each being, and right now we focus on the human dynamic, is presence of the divine, how do I treat them or recognize that, rather than, and at the same time, challenge the behavior and the non-sacred, violent ways that this person is participating in. But he is my brother, whether I like it or not. And so how do I, and I've been praying for him, not that, because he's a part of the family. And it's not easy, because I get livid with some of the stuff that's happening. And that's okay, because that's a response to something that's being violated or being destroyed, or something that I value, or someone that I value. And as you can tell, I'm an immigrant. I'm a refugee. And so the whole dynamic with the whole immigrant thing really upsets me. And he's an immigrant. I mean, let's be clear. But I'm more and more reflecting on the fact that it's not just about immigration, it's about racism, that we do not honor differences, whether it's difference of color, difference of religion, difference of culture. And so it's, and how do I, out of my own being then, respond in honoring ways to those that are different to me. And I believe in that morphogenic field that Rupert Sheldrake talks about, that enough of us continue to move in life-giving ways that it is going to affect and influence the whole. And how do we resist the violent and destructive ways? And I've had to stop watching some TV and some news because it was getting to me. So I am fasting. One way that I look at it, I'm fasting from sort of places and ways that only evoke in me anger and frustration and violence. So I don't know. The best I can do on my good days, I'm able to be much more heartfelt about it, praying for him, than on not so good days. And it's just recognizing and that he is my brother, whether I like it or not. It's not my choice of deciding who is in my family. And that's also true, moving it beyond the human dynamics. But right now, because you asked that question, that's the best at this point that I can reflect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. I think we all struggle with what to do right now.
I can't hear you.
You've disappeared. Your voice is gone. This is a funny system today.
Okay, I'm here. Thank you for that.
Okay.
There are ghosts in the machine.
Especially, I would imagine some of the work, I mean, you can't separate it, but I know Penny pays attention to this as well. Just what the ecology and women in particular suffer. It's giving us this idea of prayer. I mean, it opens a new path for me to pray. Other comments or questions? Yes, Sylvia. Although it looks like Alexandra's frozen again.
Oh no.
Well, my question was, Alexandra, are you still part of the community of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace?
Okay. What did we do last? Oh, there she goes. She'll be back. She's good at this.
Yeah.
We just edited those out.
One thing that I remember, and when she comes back on, we'll go back to your question, is she would take 3 days off every month. This is back in '99 to do a retreat. Okay, here she is. And I always thought that was fascinating. Alexandra, you're on mute.
There we go.
Okay, and Sylvia has a question.
Alexandra, I'm back. Do you still belong, are you still a member of your religious community?
Oh, yes. I've been a member for 54 years. Yes. And I celebrated my Golden Jubilee in 2014.
Wow.
And it resulted in one of the things that I was privileged to engage with is to go on a pilgrimage to Europe to visit some of the sacred places that have been significant on my journey. Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about, because one of the things you said back in 1999 was that every month you took a 3-day retreat, if I have that right. And
I did.
I believe retreat has been significant to you. And can you say more about that part of your life?
Yes. Basically, I named myself as a recovering saviorette. That was one of the awarenesses that I grew into. Now, that has shifted somewhat because of the aging process, that I am paying more attention and close attention to how I am attending to my own physical and rest needs. But I find that silence is absolutely essential for me. And a lot of times it's in creation, because that's what I find so healing and nurturing. Now, in '99, I was involved in a lot of different things, teaching, involved in community ministry, involved as a spiritual companion. And what I discovered was that often weekends were not available for me because I was working. And so I needed some space to recoup. And so I would actually do a 3 to 5 day, I block out 3 to 5 days. And at that time, there was this wonderful retreat place called Nestucca Sanctuary on the Oregon coast that I know Sue certainly has been there, but it was run by Jesuits. Now it's gone now. But I would go down there, and that's where I would be spending that kind of space and time. And in those days, there were no cell phones. There was no phone on the land, 90 acres to roam, where the Nestucca River flows into the ocean. And that was a place of healing and renewal and refreshment for me.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? How many, can you raise your hand if you had Alexandra at UCS? So almost half of us have.
Yeah.
Mm.
She brought it greatly to life for me. And if it was early on in your teaching, didn't it just make the rest of the curriculum fall into place? I mean, the door opened and Meister Eckhart could walk in, or Hildegard, or MC Richards.
She was very, very clear in her teaching. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel that that's really such an important call of being teacher for me. And even as a spiritual companion, the teacher is never far away.
Huh. Well. Final comments? I also want to say that Rumi poem. Oh yeah, Sylvia has a question.
I just want you to know, Alexandra, that my grandparents on my mother's side came from Austria-Hungary.
Oh, so that's wonderful. A lovely connection.
And with DNA testing now, you may be cousins.
Who knows? That's right.
That's right.
I just had a chance, I'm back from Poland, and it was my first travel to an Eastern country. And I got a sense perhaps of what Hungary might be like. And was your mother's teaching that she learned with the sisters, is that very much part of how you got magnetized to creation spirituality, or was it circumstance?
Well, actually what happened was, I was in the community in the 1970s. I was the novice director, which means the person who works with and involved in the formation of the newer members. And I was with it 6 years, and then I received a sabbatical. But during that time, I was working with the novices in terms of praying, and one of them played the guitar, so I encouraged her to pray with the guitar, and another one was loved gardening, so I invited her to do gardening as her prayer. And I got into trouble by some of the members of the community, like the novices are not in chapel praying, which was, and I thought, but they are praying. And then that's when I read Matt Fox's book on becoming a musical mystical bear. And that, I think, was what then led me when I had my sabbatical. I thought, I need to go to Mundelein to be part of the program. And then while I was there in, I think it was 82, 83, then it's at that time, Matt asked me to come on board because we were moving either to East Coast or West Coast. And Matt asked me if I'd consider being part of the program. And I said, no, why? And he said, because you're creation spiritual, you're grounded in creation spirituality. And I said, that's true, but that's no reason to hire me. But we came out west and Oakland to Holy Names College at that time, now university. And basically that's, it was just a natural flow from one to another to another. And I never saw myself not being involved in creation, but it gave me language and acknowledging of my groundedness in creation. And then of course, then the new cosmology and the mystics, and it just kept enriching and enriching my life. And I also want to say that one of my teachers at Mundelein was Rosemary Radford Ruther. So the whole notion of feminism And she was one of the first people to sort of make connections with nature and women. Was also a continued unfolding and becoming.
All right. Penny, I'm going to mute myself.
Hello, Alexandra. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can now.
Oh, okay. Hello, Alexandra.
Hello, Penny.
I want to express my immense gratitude for what you have taught me about the value of language.
Mm.
I was a math major who worked with computers all of my life when I came to UCS. And I think that your class just engaged me in the magic of getting it precisely right. Capitalizing Earth. So many people don't get that. I'm just really thankful, and I want to let you know now that I'm the faith coordinator for a local river keeper group. And I get to work with possibly the potential of about 150 churches and synagogues in Virginia Beach. Finally, my DMin degree has a real life application.
Yay!
Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right. Thomas, I see you with the drum. Are there words for accompanying this talk with the drum? Aho. Well, if there are no more comments, we can sign off. John, do you want to draw this to a close?
Sure. I just want to tell Alexandra how much I appreciate her today, and this glimpse into her inner life and her great wisdom and her life experience and her continuing unfolding commitment to becoming the divine in her own form. I just think that's so lovely. So I'm so grateful that you are with us. Thank you for being here, and to be continued.
Thank you.
I guess we're done.
So wonderful.
So wonderful. Until next time.
See you November 16th with Larry.
That will be such fun. Bye, all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.